So welcome back, fellow adventurers, to another Outward Magic guide, this time looking at Lexicons and Sigils. So everything I'm going to be covering is going to include a new setup, the idea of a sword as a lexicon, the wind, fire, ice sigils, and as well as looking at combining some sigils. So to start with, let's take a look at this new setup. You'll see obviously it's very different to the last character I had, and we're going to take a look at that armor and what I am wearing. So let's take a look here then. So to start with, we've got the Lightmenders Lexicon. Thank you to Chromatic Jester for pointing this out in the last video, that it actually has a hidden 15% mana cost reduction. You can't actually see that in the stats in the description, but you can see it if you actually equipped and unequipped the Lexicon. So if we just unequip it now, you'll see that down in the bottom left, that miscellaneous value for magic cost reduction went from 95% reduction to 80%, so showing that hidden 15%. I'm also just showing you here that obviously my max mana is actually 60, so one of the points of this setup is that everything's giving you a reduction in mana cost, that 95% in total, which basically means you don't notice the mana cost of any of your skills. And that means then that when you go to the mountain, when you actually go and get your magicka, you only need to take a +1. You only need to get that 20%. So here then, obviously I'm wearing the Gold-lich armor, so you've got the Gold-lich mask, minus 30% mana cost. Also given lots of resistances to lightning. I've got 90 lightning resistance and 30 fire. Also got the Lightmenders backpack, also giving a mana cost reduction. Again, all of this is adding up to that 95% mana cost reduction. So again, all you want to take when you get to the mountain, if you're going to go for this setup, is just that +1. Just get that 20 mana so that you actually have magic to use. What we're then going to now look at obviously are the passive buffs I've got. So I've got all of your basic passives like fast maintenance, your fitness. These are all ones you can get, not part of a chain link. They're all really important to get because they just really help you out. Here in the runic one, we've also got the arcane one, but instead of the internalized, I've gone for the runic prefix. We'll be having a look at that in detail in a minute as to why I've not gone for the internalized on this new character. But basically because the way this new build is that I don't actually need to have the lexicon. And then obviously you've got your two mana abilities, one giving you that extra 40 mana from the runic skill line, and then the ley line one from the shaman, who gives you the chakram skills and the ice sigil, if I'm remembering correctly. So we're also going to be looking at these different skills. Obviously the chakram skills I do have because of getting that ley line connection, but there's still an aspect of, they're kind of somewhere between magic and melee that I don't completely understand yet. So this video is just going to be focusing on the winds, fire and ice sigils and some of the additional effects you can actually use with those. So let's move on to the first one. So we're now going to be looking at the idea of a sword as a lexicon. So as you know, you can summon your runic blade with red and purple. Because I've got those runic prefixes, I've got the additional effects, so you'll notice the sword's glowing. That's because it's got the divine light. So it's now doing lightning damage and emitting light, which means that it does a lot more damage compared to if you take the internalized lexicon chain link skill. So all in all, the ultimate decision has been that it works out better to take this one. And you'll now notice I've put away the book and can still cast magic. And a thank you needs to go out to Tom Miller for this comment in the previous video, highlighting that actually summoning the ethereal blades then acts as your lexicon. So this means that if you wanted to, you could equip the shield. I sadly don't actually have one in my inventory. I tend to choose to still have the Lexicon equipped just for that extra mana cost reduction, but you don't have to. You could now change your setup to still use the runic magic, but once you've summoned your blade, you could then equip a shield, or if you really wanted to, some other form of offhand, like a chakram or a dagger. If we then summon the two-handed, though, you'll notice that we can't use the runic magic. That's more because it's a two-handed ability. You don't have your hands free, essentially, is the way that you could think about that. But if you like two-handed weapons, it does do greater decay damage. It does huge amounts of damage. If you're comfortable using a two-handed sword, it can almost one-shot a lot of general bandits and mobs, or just do a lot of damage. So it's a great other choice to go for. And also you can just get rid of it by bringing out your Lexicon or unequipping it. So all in all, this new idea, this new ability to actually have the sword as your Lexicon creates a whole wide range of other ways of playing a magic character. You really can go for a spell blade, you know, not just using those spell blade skills, but actually combining sword and magic skills. Also pointing out here that you can imbue the ethereal blade with other forms of magic using either rags or bottles. Someone asked in the comments in the previous video about this, and you can see that I have imbued it with frost. Doesn't last as long because I've only used a rag, but it means that if you want to be looking at using the right elements against certain mobs, because obviously lightning is not necessarily going to be good against everything, especially some of those lightning creatures out there, you might want to choose to instead imbue it with something else. But it does mean that even if you don't choose to imbue it with something else, that extra imbuement of light really does just do extra damage, especially against all those non-lightning creatures. So, all in all, a great way to be able to go and build this character. So, on to the first sigil then. We're looking at the wind sigil here. Some of this I covered in the previous video. So we've got obviously the mana push, does a great impact and hurls out a ball of energy, which is great for long distance. We've then obviously got Spark, which as normal does your AoE lightning damage, but the new one is Conjure. So you'll see here, out of the wind sigil, gonna cast Conjure and does the lightning damage inside the wind sigil. Thank you to Tom Miller, Tufam and Lord Wolvernon for actually pointing this out. So you can obviously use your Spark in the sigil, but now Conjure can be used out of it, and so any enemies in that wind sigil are going to take high amounts of lightning damage. Again, really adding a new dynamic to the wind magic, and means that I've got to consider some of my playstyle, and I might actually switch out Spark for Conjure. So that there is obviously a new ability to use with wind sigils. On to the next one then, so we're looking at the fire sigil. Obviously we've got our usual skills, so we've got Mana Ward here, giving us a little bit of protection. Spark and the flint and steel aren't going to do anything on their own. But once we cast this fire sigil, obviously everyone's really familiar, I think, with Spark. It's probably one of the first magic skills you really learn how to use, where you hurl that fireball. The one I mentioned before, Elsie, was using the Mana Ward, where you get Immolate. Gives you a great increase to your fire damage. You are taking some fire damage, but it's a small amount. So as long as you have a decent amount of health, not going to be a big problem. So if you're going to go for a fire build, this is a great way to go. Where you've got your Spark, you've got your Immolate, and the new one we're adding to this is this Flint and Steel. So here, just used it, and you'll see we've now got a ring of fire. Thank you to Happy Shinigami for pointing this out in the previous video. It looks amazing for one. You know, you're on fire, the fire sigil's on fire, You've got increased fire damage, you're hurling out fireballs, and any enemies that come into this fire sigil are going to take burning damage, and they're going to be essentially set on fire. So if you're going to go for a fire build, this is a great choice. Little tip, if you don't know how to get rid of Immolate, just drink some water. So if you want to instead go for a kind of fire build, these are some great skills to think about using. And also you could always use them from your inventory rather than hotbarring them. So now onto the Ive Sigils. I obviously didn't have this in the last video. I thought it unlocked it and hadn't. So here we've now got Mana Push, obviously a great impact skill, and Kick. Both going to keep your enemies away from you, keep their impact down, and the mana wards. But all these can actually then be combined with the Ive Sigil. So again, if instead of wind or fire you want to go for ice as a build, maybe using an ice weapon, these are some of the great skills you can actually use with the Ive Sigil. So Ive Sigil also looks very cool. First off, we've got obviously the Mana Push, hurls out a shard of ice at them and does some impact damage. So again, there's your ranged ability to use. In the Ive Sigil, you're going to get your enemy's attention, get them to come into you. Then we've got the Kick. Thank you again, Happy Shinigami, for mentioning this one. So that Kick does ice damage. And then we've also lastly got the mana wards, which in the Ive Sigil, rather than protecting you, does a blast of ice damage. So all in all, we've got our shard to fire out, we've got our Kick, which is going to be high impact and close damage, and our AoE mana wards, which is going to obviously take out loads of enemies. So again, great skills to consider if you want to make an Ive Sigil based build for magic. Last but not least then, we're looking at combining sigils, and this is wind meets fire. So if you pop down your wind sigil and then your fire sigil, and all you're going to need for this is spark, and it's a bit hard to see, but I'm casting both the lightning AoE and the fireball at the same time. So you're doing massive amounts of damage when you cast just spark. Really cheap to use, really quick. You'll be able to cast it loads, and again, this goes to Happy Shinigami for pointing this out. You could obviously then have another skill hotbarred, like the Mana Push. It's going to be your range skill and do high amounts of impact, or you could put any other skill you wanted in there, maybe a sword skill. So thank you very much for everyone for all your comments on the previous video. They've really helped us be able to share some of these insights with you guys. Please remember to like, comment and subscribe. It really helps us to keep making these videos and sharing all this great information about Outward with you. And please put in the comments anything else you'd like to hear, or anything you might want to shout out about in the next video. Happy hunting everyone, and I'll see you next time.